Olof Palme, 1986. Swedish Prime Minister Olof Palme was fatally shot on February 28, 1986, while walking home from a cinema in central Stockholm with his wife. He had dismissed his security detail earlier that evening. Palme was a vocal critic of both U.S. and Soviet foreign policies, South African apartheid, and the proliferation of nuclear weapons. His assassination shattered the perception of Sweden as a uniquely safe, open, and peaceful democracy. In the failure of the Swedish police to secure the crime scene or immediately lock down the city, led to a decades-long, deeply flawed investigation. While a petty criminal named Christer Pettersson was convicted in 1989, he was later acquitted on appeal. The lack of a definitive resolution bred numerous conspiracy theories involving foreign intelligence agencies and right-wing extremists, leaving a lasting psychological scar on the Swedish political landscape. King Alexander I, 1934. King Alexander I of Yugoslavia was assassinated in Marseille, France, on October 9, 1934, by Vlado Chernozemski, an expert marksman belonging to the Internal Macedonian Revolutionary Organization, IMRO, which was working in coordination with the Croatian Ustaše. Alexander had established a royal dictatorship in 1929 to forcibly unify the fractured ethnic groups within his borders, suppressing both Croatian and Macedonian nationalist movements. As he rode in an open car with French Foreign Minister Louis Barthou, Chernozemski stepped from the crowd and shot both men. This event holds historical significance as one of the first assassinations captured on newsreel film. The geopolitical fallout was severe. It deeply destabilized the Balkans, fractured Yugoslavian internal politics, and highlighted the growing strength of fascist-aligned separatist groups in Europe, leading up to World War II. Mahmud II, 1839. While the sudden death of Ottoman Sultan Mahmud II in 1839 was highly destabilizing and occurred during violent internal struggles, historical records show he actually died of tuberculosis, not by assassination. However, the impact of his death mirrored that of a targeted killing. Mahmud II was a fierce reformer who systematically dismantled the Janissary Corps in 1826 to modernize the Ottoman military and administration. His aggressive centralization efforts, known as the Tanzimat Reforms, alienated traditionalists and sparked rebellions across the empire, particularly in Egypt under Muhammad Ali. Mahmud died just days before the disastrous Battle of Nazib, where the Ottoman army was decimated by Egyptian forces. His sudden absence left the empire in a massive power vacuum during its most vulnerable moment, accelerating the structural decline of the Ottoman state. Benazir Bhutto, 2007. Benazir Bhutto, the first female democratic head of government in a Muslim-majority nation, was assassinated on December 27, 2007, in Rawalpindi, Pakistan. She had recently returned from a long political exile to contest the upcoming parliamentary elections, representing a major challenge to the military rule of President Pervez Musharraf. After addressing a massive political rally, a gunman fired at her vehicle before detonating a suicide vest, killing Bhutto and over 20 bystanders. Her death instantly derailed Pakistan's fragile democratic transition, sparking nationwide riots, destroying infrastructure, and plunging the country into an economic crisis. The assassination eliminated a major unifying political figure in Pakistan and emboldened the militant groups operating within the country's tribal regions. Indira Gandhi, 1984. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi was assassinated on October 31, 1984, by two of her own Sikh bodyguards in the garden of her New Delhi residence. The assassination was a direct retaliation for Operation Blue Star, a military assault ordered by Gandhi earlier that year to remove armed Sikh separatists from the Golden Temple in Amritsar, the holiest site in Sikhism. The military operation caused heavy casualties and severe damage to the temple, deeply outraging the global Sikh community. Gandhi's assassination triggered massive, coordinated anti-Sikh pogroms across India, particularly in New Delhi, resulting in the deaths of approximately 3,000 to 8,000 Sikhs over a few days. The event fundamentally altered India's internal security protocols and created deep, long-lasting sectarian divides within Indian politics. King Faisal, 1975. King Faisal of Saudi Arabia was assassinated on March 25, 1975, by his half-brother's son, Prince Faisal bin Musaid, who shot the king point-blank during a royal audience. King Faisal was the architect of modern Saudi Arabia's immense geopolitical power. In 1973, he orchestrated the OAPEC oil embargo against the United States and other Western nations in retaliation for their support of Israel during the Yom Kippur War. This embargo quadrupled global oil prices, triggered a massive economic crisis in the West, and permanently shifted the balance of global wealth toward the Middle East. His sudden death removed a stabilizing, highly influential leader from the Arab world, though forcing a rapid reorganization of Saudi internal politics and altering the trajectory of Middle Eastern diplomacy. Patrice Lumumba, 1961. Patrice Lumumba, the first legally elected Prime Minister of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, was executed on January 17, 1961. Following the Congo's independence from Belgium, the mineral-rich province of Katanga seceded with the backing of Belgian mining interests. When the United Nations refused to help suppress the rebellion, Lumumba requested assistance from the Soviet Union. This immediately designated him as a severe threat to Western interests during the Cold War. With the complicity of the CYA and Belgian intelligence, Lumumba was captured by forces loyal to his political rival, Joseph Mobutu. He was transferred to Katanga, tortured, and executed by a firing squad commanded by Belgian officers. His death cemented decades of brutal dictatorship under Mobutu Sese Seko and turned the Congo into a bloody proxy battleground between superpowers. Yitzhak Rabin, 1995, Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, was assassinated on November 4, 1995, following a peace rally in Tel Aviv. The shooter, Yigal Amir, was a right-wing Israeli extremist who violently opposed Rabin's signing of the Oslo Accords, which granted partial autonomy to the Palestinian National Authority. Amir believed he was fulfilling a religious duty to prevent the transfer of biblical lands to Palestinians. Rabin, a former general who led Israel's military to victory in the 1967 Six-Day War, possessed the unique domestic credibility required to push through territorial concessions. His death immediately paralyzed the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. The subsequent elections brought conservative leadership to power, fundamentally altering Middle Eastern diplomacy and ending the most viable framework for a two-state solution in modern history. Anwar Sadat, 1981. Egyptian President Anwar Sadat was assassinated on October 6, 1981, during a military parade in Cairo. The attackers were members of the Egyptian Islamic Jihad, who infiltrated the military ranks. Sadat had completely realigned Middle Eastern politics by signing the 1978 Camp David Accords and a subsequent peace treaty with Israel in 1979, becoming the first Arab leader to officially recognize the Israeli state. While this secured the return of the Sinai Peninsula to Egypt and earned Sadat a Nobel Peace Prize, it resulted in Egypt being suspended from the Arab League and made Sadat a primary target for radical Islamist groups. His assassination brought Hosni Mubarak to power, initiating a 30-year autocratic rule in Egypt and fundamentally changing the geopolitical alliances of the Arab world. Reinhard Heydrich, 1942. Reinhard Heydrich, one of the main architects of the Holocaust and the acting Reich protector of Bohemia and Moravia, was assassinated by Czechoslovak operatives trained by the British Special Operations Executive. On May 27, 1942, during Operation Anthropoid, The operatives ambushed Heydrich's open-top Mercedes in Prague, detonating an anti-tank grenade that inflicted fatal shrapnel wounds. Heydrich was the highest-ranking Nazi official to be assassinated during World War II. In direct retaliation, Adolf Hitler ordered the total destruction of the Czech villages of Liditz and Ležáky. All men were executed, and the women and children were sent to concentration camps. The assassination eliminated one of the most capable and ruthless leaders within the Nazi regime. But the brutal reprisals escalated the terror tactics of the SS across occupied Europe. The Tsar Alexander II, 1881. Tsar Alexander II of Russia, known as the Liberator for emancipating the Russian serfs in 1861, was assassinated on March 13, 1881, by members of the radical revolutionary group Narodnaya Volya, People's Will. Attackers threw multiple bombs at the Tsar's carriage in St. Petersburg, fatally tearing off his legs. Alexander II had implemented massive judicial and military reforms and was literally en route to sign a constitution that would have established a national parliament in Russia. His assassination had the exact opposite effect of what the revolutionaries intended. His successor, Alexander III, immediately tore up the proposed constitution, established a police state, and rolled back decades of progressive reforms. This violent suppression drove opposition groups further underground, directly laying the groundwork for the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917. John F. Kennedy, 1963. United States President John F. Kennedy was assassinated by Lee Harvey Oswald on November 22, 1963, while riding in a presidential motorcade through Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas. Kennedy's death occurred at the absolute height of the Cold War, just over a year after the Cuban Missile Crisis brought the world to the brink of nuclear war. His assassination abruptly transferred executive power to Lyndon B. Johnson, who aggressively escalated American military involvement in the Vietnam War, a conflict Kennedy had been hesitant to fully commit ground troops to. Domestically, the shock of the assassination fractured the post-World War II optimism of the American public. The subsequent controversies and classified files surrounding the Warren Commission's findings birthed a permanent, systemic distrust of the federal government that continues to shape American political culture. Abraham Lincoln, 1865. President Abraham Lincoln was shot by Confederate sympathizer John Wilkes Booth at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. on April 14, 1865, mere days after the surrender of the primary Confederate Army. Lincoln had just successfully navigated the United States through its bloodiest conflict, preserving the Union and issuing the Emancipation Proclamation. His assassination drastically altered the trajectory of the post-war Reconstruction era. Executive power fell to Vice President Andrew Johnson, a Southern Democrat who was highly sympathetic to former Confederates. Johnson systematically dismantled Lincoln's plans to integrate newly freed slaves into American society with federal protection. This allowed Southern states to implement black codes and establish the Jim Crow system, effectively delaying civil rights and racial equality in the United States for another century. Julius Caesar, 44 BC. Julius Caesar, the dictator of Rome, was stabbed 23 times on the floor of the Roman Senate on the Ides of March, 44 BC. The conspiracy, led by Brutus and Cassius, involved up to 60 senators who feared Caesar intended to crown himself king and permanently dismantle the Roman Republic. Instead of restoring republican traditions, the assassination created a massive power vacuum. It triggered a series of devastating civil wars, pitting Caesar's assassins against his loyalists, Mark Antony and Octavian. The resulting conflicts eradicated the old senatorial elite. By 27 BC, Octavian emerged victorious, taking the title of Augustus and establishing the Roman Empire. The assassination of Caesar directly caused the very outcome the conspirators bled to prevent. the permanent end of the 500-year-old Roman Republic. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, 1914. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, in Sarajevo on June 28, 1914, is the single most consequential political murder in recorded history. He was shot by Gavrilo Princip, a 19-year-old Bosnian Serb nationalist linked to the secret military society known as the Black Hand. The assassination activated a complex, rigid web of European military alliances. Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. Russia mobilized to defend Serbia. Germany mobilized to support Austria-Hungary, and France and Britain were subsequently pulled into the conflict. Within weeks, the assassination escalated into World War I. The resulting 4 years of industrialized slaughter killed an estimated 20 million people, completely destroyed the Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, Russian, and German empires, redrew the map of the Middle East, and directly set the stage for World War II.